AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house after she destroyed my trust years ago, even though the rest of the family insists I'm being petty and cruel. I'm 34 and live in a small but comfortable house that I bought about 4 years ago. I work my butt off to afford it because I grew up in a chaotic household where money was always a ticking time bomb. My parents were financially reckless, and my older sister, Jenna, 38, learned every bad habit from them. She spent years bouncing between jobs, getting into debt, and relying on others to bail her out. I, on the other hand, became the responsible one by default. I budget plan, save, and maybe overthink everything money-related, but it's because I've had to. About 8 years ago, before I bought my house, I shared an apartment with Jenna because she had nowhere else to go. I thought it would help her get back on her feet. Instead, she brought random friends over at all hours, used my things without asking, let her boyfriend basically live with us without paying anything, and borrowed money constantly with promises to repay that she never fulfilled. The final straw was when she threw a massive party while I was visiting a friend for a weekend. My security deposit was completely wiped out. I had to pay for repairs, and the landlord kicked us both out. Jenna shrugged it off as bad luck. I had to start over from scratch. After that, I kept my distance. Eventually, I bought my house, and Jenna drifted through jobs and couch surfed. She wasn't homeless or starving. She just never stuck to anything long enough to stabilize. She and I were polite but distant. About 3 months ago, Jenna called me in tears. She said she lost her job, her boyfriend left her, and she was being evicted from her apartment. She asked if she could move in temporarily until she got back on her feet. I said no, not rudely, not angrily, just firmly. I reminded her of what happened last time. I told her I've worked incredibly hard to make my home peaceful and predictable, and I can't jeopardize that again. I offered to help her look for resources, shelters, temporary housing programs, and even offered a small loan to get her through a month of rent in a cheaper place. She didn't want any of that. She wanted my spare room. She cried and tried to guilt-trip me, saying I'm her sister and she is no one else. When I didn't change my mind, she hung up on me. That same evening, my mom called furious. Apparently, Jenna told everyone I was letting my own sister become homeless. I explained a real story, including the part about offering alternative help. But my parents insisted that family helps family and that I was choosing money and comfort over my sister's well-being. For the next few weeks, various relatives called to pressure me. Aunts, cousins, even my grandmother. At one point, my uncle texted saying, "You think your house is worth more than your sister's dignity?" That one stung because it wasn't about my house. It was about boundaries and survival. What made everything worse was that during these weeks, someone, still no one has admitted who, showed up at my house and left 2 bags of Jenna's belongings on my porch. As in literally dropped them off like a passive-aggressive delivery. I was at work when it happened. I checked my doorbell camera, and although the person kept their hoodie up, I'm 99% sure it was my cousin's car. That night, Jenna texted me saying, "Guess the universe is making the decision for us." I didn't respond. I put the bags in my garage and locked the door. The next day, she showed up at my house and demanded I let her in. She said she couldn't afford a motel. I repeated the same thing. I will help her find resources. I will help her contact housing programs. I will even drive her to a shelter, but she cannot move in with me. She screamed that I'm heartless and slammed her hand on my front door so hard that my neighbor came outside. When she noticed people watching, she stormed off. After that, my family escalated. My mom said she wouldn't speak to me until I fixed things. My grandmother said she's ashamed of me. My dad said he's disappointed that I turned out so cold. The only people who supported me were 2 cousins who've had similar experiences with Jenna. They said I was doing the right thing, but they also warned me my reputation with the rest of the family might never recover. Last week, I got invited to a family dinner that I knew was going to be one big intervention disguised as a meal. I didn't go. I ended up getting 17 angry texts afterwards saying that I made things worse by refusing to even show up, and that Jenna was crying at the table saying she has nowhere to go. But here's the actual truth. She did have somewhere to go. She found a room to rent from a friend of friend. I know because she posted about it on social media. She said things like starting over, new chapter, ready to rebuild. That's great, Genuinely. But she didn't tell the family. So they were berating me for turning her away while she was already safely moved in somewhere else. Once I found out, I sent a group message to my parents and some relatives explaining that Jenna had already secured housing and that she had chosen not to tell them. I thought this would cool things down. Instead, it made everything worse because now they claim I'm trying to make her look bad. My mom said, maybe she didn't tell us because she was ashamed you forced her into a stranger's home instead of letting her be with family. The family narrative has now become that I abandoned my sister during her darkest moment, despite me offering every possible type of help short of sacrificing my home and sanity. Some relatives have blocked me. Others keep messaging me about how I need to apologize to Jenna, and a few have said they're reconsidering inviting me to future events if I'm going to act this selfish. At this point, I'm exhausted. I don't feel I owe Jenna anything beyond the support I already offered, and I can't shake the fear that if she moved in, I'd be reliving the nightmare from 8 years ago. I've built stability for myself for the first time in my life. I don't want to lose it. So now I'm stuck wondering, am I really the villain they're painting me as? Am I actually being cold and selfish for drawing a boundary based on past behavior? Or am I just refusing to be an emotional safety net for someone who's never once taken responsibility for the damage they caused? AITA, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to take care of my brother's baby, even though everyone insists I'm the obvious choice. I'm a 32-year-old man who works from home as a graphic designer. I live alone in a quiet 2-bedroom apartment that I pay for entirely on my own. I've always been a stable sibling. My younger brother, 27, is the complete opposite. He's bounced between jobs, apartments, girlfriends, and hobbies, always chasing some new life-changing opportunity that he abandons 3 months later. Despite that, he's charismatic, people adore him, and somehow he always convinces our parents to bail him out. Last year, he told us he had met the one, a woman he'd known for 6 weeks, and that she was pregnant. My parents panicked quietly, I panicked loudly, and my brother insisted everything was fine. He moved in with her, talked about becoming a family man, and for about 5 months he acted surprisingly responsible. Then his girlfriend left him. According to her, he was great with her, but totally uninterested in preparing for the baby. He refused to get a stable job, he wouldn't go to prenatal appointments, and he spent money on DJ equipment instead of baby supplies. After she left, he fell apart. He moved back with my parents, quit yet another job, and claimed he was too stressed to function. The baby was born 3 months ago. The mother has custody for now, but has been struggling financially, so my brother recently pushed to get partial custody. Everyone was shocked when the court granted him alternating weekends, but the judge apparently believed he was trying to get his life together. Except my brother is not doing anything. Not getting a job, not preparing his room for the baby, not learning to care for an infant. He's treating his weekends like social events, going out, sleeping through alarms, and letting my exhausted parents pick up the slack. 2 weeks ago, he showed up at my door on a Friday night with the baby. No warning, no text, just standing on my doorstep holding a diaper bag and looking desperate. He said my parents needed a break, he needed a break, and I was the best person to help. I told him absolutely not because I had deadlines and a whole weekend plan that didn't involve unexpectedly babysitting an infant. He pushed past me into the apartment like he owned the place, saying he'd only be gone an hour or two. He put the baby carrier on my couch and sprinted out before I could stop him. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer. I called my parents, and they said he told them I had offered to keep the baby for the weekend so they could rest. My mother sounded relieved, which made me feel awful, but I told her I never agreed. I ended up watching the baby that night because I didn't want to drag a screaming infant around trying to hunt my brother down. I was furious, but the baby is innocent, and I wasn't going to let him suffer. I fed him, changed him, rocked him, and barely slept. My brother finally showed up at noon the next day, hungover. He acted like everything was normal and said he was glad I got quality uncle bonding time. I lost it. I told him he couldn't dump his kid on me like that. He shrugged, and said I was being dramatic. For the next week, my parents bombarded me with calls about how good I am with the baby and how it would help the whole family if I agreed to take the baby on my brother's custody weekends. I told them no every time because I am not the father. I didn't agree to this, and I refused to become the built-in babysitter. My mother cried and said she and my father are exhausted and that I'm the only one with flexibility. My father tried to guilt-trip me by saying I was abandoning my family. I told them I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm refusing to enable my brother's irresponsibility. Then my brother showed up again, this time trying to have a calm conversation. He said he knows he messed up, but that he needs help to become a better dad. He told me I should look at this as a blessing because I could form a close bond with my nephew. I told him that if he actually wants to be a good dad, he needs to step up himself instead of outsourcing parenthood to the people around him. He got angry and accused me of judging him. He said I'm lucky I have a cushy life and that a real man would put family first. I reminded him that part of being a real man is taking care of your own responsibilities. He stormed out. Now my entire family is divided. Half thinks I'm right. Half thinks I'm cruel. My aunt called and said I should think of the baby. My cousin texted saying I'm cold. My co-workers, when I told them what happened, all said I should cut my family off entirely. I don't want to do that, but I'm tired of being treated like everyone's emergency backup. I love my nephew. I'll happily babysit if asked respectfully and given proper notice. But I will not become the default parent because my brother refuses to grow up. My parents keep pleading with me to reconsider, saying the baby could end up in foster care if the situation gets worse. I don't know how realistic that is, but even if it were true, am I really supposed to sacrifice my entire life because my brother won't get his act together? I worked hard to build stability. I don't want to lose my job, my peace, or my independence. My friends insist I'm being taken advantage of and need to hold firm boundaries. My family says I'm heartless. So, AITA for refusing to help raise my brother's baby, even though everyone insists I'm the only one who can handle it. AITA for refusing to give up the house my late sister left me, even though my parents say it should rightfully be theirs. A few months ago, my older sister, Lila, passed away unexpectedly. She was only 34. It was a shock that none of us were prepared for, and losing her has been the worst experience of my life. We were very close despite a 9-year age gap. She practically raised me because our parents were very focused on their business and were often absent. Lila was the one who showed up to my school plays, helped me with homework, taught me how to cook, and took me on spontaneous road trips the moment I turned 16. She never married and didn't have kids. She became very successful in her career in tech and bought a house about 5 years ago in a beautiful neighborhood. She invited me over constantly and even gave me a key so I could study there when my parents' place felt too chaotic. I spent so much time there that people joked it was my unofficial dorm when I was in college. A week after she passed, we found out that she had left the house to me in her will. Everything else, she split among various charities, an animal rescue, and some friends. The only significant thing she left to family was the house, and it was mine. I was shocked. I cried for hours. It felt like the last gift from the person who cared about me more than anyone else. I had no expectation of inheriting anything. I loved her deeply and would have chosen to have her alive instead of anything she owned. My parents, however, had a very different reaction. At first, they acted supportive, saying things like, "That's wonderful, sweetie, she really adored you." But a few days later, my mom asked to go over some things. She brought out the paperwork and started subtly hinting that maybe I should give the house back to the family for the sake of unity. She said it would be better if I moved back home, so we could all be close during this difficult time. I said I planned on keeping the house because it had huge sentimental value and also because it was a stable place for me to live. I'm 25, working my first stable job after finishing grad school, but I'm still paying off loans and nowhere near the point where I could afford a place like that on my own. Mom acted surprised, but dropped it for the moment. Dad didn't. He outright told me that a child shouldn't own a house before their parents do, and that Lila only left it to you because she assumed we'd be taken care of by you anyway. He said they had sacrificed their whole lives raising us, and it was only fair that the home stay with them. This was ridiculous. They had been financially comfortable for years. Their house is paid off. They vacation twice a year. They definitely don't need or even truly want the property. They just hate that the world wasn't centered around them. I told them no, firmly. That's when everything exploded. My mom started crying, saying she had always feared Lila loved me more. My dad said that I was letting money corrupt me and that it was disgusting. They guilt me for hours, telling me I was betraying the family and dishonoring my sister's memory. My mother said, "Don't you think she would want us to have a place to remember her too?" Which felt manipulative because they barely visited her house when she was alive. I left their place feeling awful. I didn't respond to their texts for a few days because I needed space. When I did, they doubled down, saying I was ungrateful and selfish. Then things got weird. A neighbor of my parents approached me while I was taking out the trash at my sister's place. She asked if everything was okay because my parents were telling people that I had snatched the house and was planning on selling it, leaving them with nothing. I was furious. I confronted my parents again, and my dad told me that if I didn't want people talking, I could fix that by doing the right thing. I told them if they didn't stop spreading lies, I would cut contact completely. My mom sobbed again and said I was cruel. My dad called me dramatic. For a while, I tried to ignore the drama and focus on grieving, but didn't stop. My parents kept pushing, kept telling extended family that I was taking advantage of them, kept telling me I was destroying the family structure. An aunt called me saying I should compromise by letting my parents live in the house and I could take care of the bills. Absolutely not. Last week was the final straw. My parents showed up unannounced at the house with boxes. They said they were just bringing a few things to store for now and try to push inside past me. I blocked the door and told them they were not moving anything into the house, period. My dad started yelling that I had no respect, that I was acting like the house was some kind of shrine only I could access. I reminded them that it was legally mine and that they needed to leave. After that confrontation, they've gone nuclear. They're telling everyone in the family that I've changed, that I'm greedy, that Lila would be ashamed of me. They've even implied that I manipulated her into giving me the house, which is beyond insane because I didn't even know she made a will. Now I'm starting to question everything. I know my sister loved me. I know she wanted me to have this house. But part of me wonders if I'm being too stubborn or if I'm making things harder than they need to be. Maybe I should have offered some sort of compromise. Maybe it really is tearing the family apart. But another part of me feels like giving them the house would be betraying Lila's trust and memory. She left it to me for a reason. She knew how much this place mattered to me. She knew how safe I felt within these walls. Still, I'm not oblivious. I know grief makes people act irrationally. I know my parents are hurting too, but does that mean I should give up something that means so much to me? Something that she specifically chose to leave to me? So, AITA for refusing to give up the house my sister left me, even when my parents insist it should be theirs. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé use my house for their intimate wedding after they tried to turn it into a week-long boot camp for my family. So I'm 33, married to my husband Evan, and we have a small, quiet home in the mountains. We don't have kids, we both work remotely, and we bought this place specifically because it's peaceful. I've always gotten along with my younger sister, Melissa, 29, but she has a habit of assuming that if she wants something, people should just rearrange their lives to make it happen. She got engaged last year to her fiancé, Carter, who's one of those hyper-organized, high-intensity people who loves leadership seminars and team-building exercises. They decided they wanted a micro-wedding focused on connection, presence, and family unity. Their idea: get married in my backyard overlooking the lake. I wasn't opposed at first. Our place is gorgeous, and I like the idea of hosting something meaningful for family. But I told them right away that it would need to be simple, small, and not disruptive. They said, of course, absolutely, totally low-key. Then came the planning. First, they asked if they could arrive a few days early to prepare. A few days turned into 5. 5 turned into, actually, could we do a full week? We want to settle into the energy of the space. I said we could manage 5 at most. They pushed. I held the line. Then came the schedule. Not a wedding schedule. A schedule for our household. They emailed us a 13-page wedding harmony packet that included wake-up times, meal plans, mandatory early morning reflection sessions, a quiet hours policy that applied to us in our own house, and a proposed ban on screens during core connection hours. They also asked us to voluntarily abstain from alcohol for the week to maintain emotional clarity. More alarming, they had assigned chores to us in our house for their wedding. Stuff like groom's sister and brother-in-law, responsible for breakfast smoothies each morning using the provided recipe. Provided recipe meaning a list of ingredients that cost more than an entire week of groceries. And homeowners, please ensure the ceremony space is free of pet hair. We have a long-haired dog and a cat. We vacuum, but apparently not enough for the spiritual flow of the event. We called them and said the packet was over the top and we weren't okay with being told how to live in our own home. Melissa said we were missing the point of the experience and that the packet was simply a guide to collective harmony. Carter chimed in and said, "The environment shapes the ceremony. Your home's energy is part of the marriage blessing." I told them flat out that we were not doing mandatory reflections, sober living rules, or chore assignments. They backed off, kinda. The next issue, guests. They said it would be 12 people max. Then it turned into 20. Then 22. Then maybe 25 depending on extended family. I said our septic system literally cannot handle that many people for a whole day. They sighed dramatically and said they felt deeply unsupported. Then came the final straw. They informed us that their officiant, who is also some kind of life coach guy, wanted to do a pre-ceremony cleansing ritual inside our house. That ritual involved burning herbs, chanting, and symbolically releasing stale energies, which they said required temporarily removing all electronics, clocks, and mirrors from the main floor. They said they would take great care in storing our belongings. I told them there was no chance on earth they were dragging my furniture around and boxing up my stuff for a ritual I didn't believe in. Melissa got teary and said I was rejecting her spiritual identity. Carter told me I was clinging to material attachments. Evan heard that and finally lost his temper. He told them to forget the whole thing. No wedding here. Our house was our home, not a retreat center. Melissa started sobbing, saying we had humiliated her and destroyed her vision. Carter sent a long text accusing us of prioritizing comfort over family unity. They announced they would be finding a new venue, but also said they wanted nothing to do with us for the foreseeable future because we had sabotaged their once-in-a-lifetime moment. Now my parents are involved. They think Melissa's plans were excessive. Yes, but they also think I overreacted and should have just allowed a few weird rituals for the sake of keeping the peace. My dad says, it's just 1 week, and my mom keeps hinting that hosting the wedding would have been an important sisterly gesture. My brother, on the other hand, says he would have thrown them out much earlier. Evan thinks we did the only reasonable thing. I'm starting to second-guess myself because Melissa is genuinely hurt, and the family group chat makes me feel like we detonated a bomb unnecessarily. But at the same time, they basically try to colonize our house. AITA for pulling the plug and refusing to let them have the wedding here after seeing what they planned. AITA for refusing to host my sister's practice baby, even though she says it's part of her parenting plan. I never thought I'd be in a situation where a grown woman asked to drop off a robot baby at my house for 4 days. But here we are. My sister, Lily, is 27 and enrolled in a very intense pre-parenthood course offered by her therapist and a parenting coach. The course uses one of those high-end, hyper-realistic infant simulators that cry, need to be fed by tapping sensors, must be burped, changed, rocked, and logged into an app that tracks your reactions. Lily has struggled with anxiety around the idea of motherhood, so I initially thought this was a great step for her. I supported it, even bought her little silicone bibs for the baby simulator as a joke. She laughed. Everything seemed fine. The issue started when she told me she wanted to do the 4-day challenge portion of the course. The challenge simulates caring for a newborn nonstop. People usually do it at home, but Lily said her boyfriend, Mark, gets very stressed by noise and wouldn't be able to handle the crying. They live in a tiny studio, and apparently the robot baby can cry louder than an actual newborn. She said Mark's therapist said minimizing his triggers was essential for his emotional wellness, so Lily decided she needed a different environment for the challenge. She asked me if she could stay at my house to do it, not just visit. She wanted to live at my place with the robotic infant for 4 full days so she could feel safe enough to let the experience be authentic. My home is quiet, I work from home, and I value peace. The idea of loud, unpredictable crying, real or simulated, did not thrill me, but I was willing to consider a compromise. I told her I could host her for a few hours during the day, or maybe one night if she really needed it. Lily said that wouldn't work because the challenge required total immersion. She then pivoted. She said if she couldn't stay with me, maybe I could take the baby for the 4 days while she stayed at home and practice self-regulation through observation. She said watching someone else care for the baby on the app live stream would help her process maternal instinct activation. I genuinely thought she was joking. She was dead serious. I told her no. A big, solid no. I'm not going to be the caretaker of a fake baby, so she can live stream it like a security camera feed. Lily started crying and telling me I didn't understand how important this course is. She said other people in her support group have family members who stepped up to model healthy attachment behaviors. I said I'm not refusing emotional support. I'm refusing to become a free childcare stand-in for a synthetic infant. She got even more upset and said that by refusing, I was contributing to her fear that she'll be alone in motherhood. She said a real baby won't be optional, so I shouldn't treat the practice baby as optional. I reminded her she doesn't have a real baby. That apparently was the wrong thing to say because she accused me of minimizing her growth process. For context, Lily has always been the dramatic one. When we were kids, she once pretended to faint because my mom told her we couldn't get pizza. She thrives on big gestures, big plans, and big emotions. I love her, but I've learned that boundaries are essential. This situation feels like one of those times. After our argument, Lily sent a long text saying she felt betrayed and unsupported. She said she needed a safe female figure in her life for this journey, and she thought I would understand because I'm her only sibling. She ended the text by saying she would remember this moment when she decided what role I would play in her future child's life. I didn't respond right away because I didn't know how to. She then called our mom and told her everything, though with some colorful edits. According to Lily's version, I told her she would be a terrible mother, that her therapy course was stupid, and that I didn't want a baby in my home because it would mess up my aesthetic. None of that happened. Mom called me confused and a little annoyed until I explained the real conversation. Mom sighed loudly and told me Lily had been overwhelmed lately and that I could just help her out for a few days to keep the peace. I asked Mom if she wanted the robot baby at her house. She quickly said no because your father can't handle the noise. That made me laugh because apparently Mark and my dad are in the same boat. I told her that if she didn't want to host it, she should understand why I don't either. Mom said it was different because she's older and deserves rest. I said I also deserve rest. She didn't have much to say to that. Now the whole family group chat is involved. My aunt weighed in to say a 4-day favor is nothing compared to a lifetime of sisterhood. My cousin sent a gif of someone rocking a baby. Even my grandma chimed in with a confusing message about spiritual motherhood. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here trying to work, imagining the robot baby shrieking its mechanical lungs out at 3 a.m. while my cat climbs the walls in terror. Lily still insists this is a simple request and that my refusal is proof I don't prioritize family. I think she's being wildly unreasonable. If this were a real baby, sure, I'd help. But it's a literal plastic doll with an app. It isn't my responsibility to perform motherhood by proxy so she can feel better about a future hypothetical child. I told her again, politely, that she needs to either do the challenge at her place or talk to her coach about an alternative setup. She said that proves I'm emotionally limited. That stung. I don't think I'm limited. I think I'm sane. Now I'm wondering if I'm missing something. Maybe hosting her for 4 days really isn't that big of a deal, and I'm blowing things out of proportion. Or maybe I'm right that this crosses a boundary so hard it leaves a dent. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's practice baby? AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she got kicked out, even though I have a spare room and everyone says I'm being heartless. I'm a 33-year-old guy living alone in a house I bought 2 years ago. I worked pretty hard to get here. Long hours, saving aggressively, skipping vacations, all that. The house isn't huge, but it's comfortable, and yes, it does have a spare bedroom I currently use as an office. I finally feel like I have personal space, peace, and a stable routine, which is something I didn't grow up with. My younger sister, 27, is chaotic, to put it kindly. She's always been the free-spirited type who jumps between jobs, relationships, and cities. She's fun in small doses, energetic, big personality, always some adventure going on. But living with her is another story. Growing up, she would blast music at 2 a.m., leave messes everywhere, bring random friends over without warning, borrow my stuff, and return it damaged or not at all. She wasn't malicious, just irresponsible. My parents always brushed it off, saying she was expressing herself, and I needed to be more patient. Fast forward to last month. She'd been living with her boyfriend for about a year in another state. Things apparently imploded in dramatic fashion. She found out he was cheating. He found out she'd racked up debt on a credit card he co-signed, and according to her, he overreacted and told her to get out immediately. She called me crying, saying she had nowhere to go. Our parents live in a tiny condo and genuinely don't have space, so she assumed I'd take her in. I hesitated, but because she was sobbing and panicked, I told her she could come stay for a week or two until she figured something out. I thought that meant she would be actively searching for a new job and an affordable place. But when she arrived, she came with 6 huge suitcases, 3 boxes, and a cat. She also brought a giant ring light setup because she's trying to grow her brand, whatever that means. Immediately, it was like all her old habits came roaring back. Clothes all over the bathroom, dirty dishes in the sink every morning, blasting TikTok videos while I was in work calls, eating things from the fridge that I had specifically meal prepped, leaving the front door unlocked multiple times. The biggest issue happened on day 4, when I came home and found 2 strangers in my living room. She said they were new friends who were helping her brainstorm content ideas. They were eating pizza on my couch. One of them had spilled soda on the rug and tried to dab it with a paper towel like it was no big deal. I told her absolutely no guests in my house without permission. She rolled her eyes and said I was being controlling. After that, I told her she needed to stick to the original plan of finding a place ASAP. She claimed she was looking, but every time I asked how it was going, she said she was still exploring options and that finding a good vibe environment takes time. Meanwhile, she had stopped doing anything helpful around the house and seemed to operate under the assumption that my place was now her place too. The situation hit a breaking point 2 weeks in. I woke up at 3 a.m. to loud laughter coming from the kitchen. I walked out and saw her FaceTiming someone on speaker while cooking pancakes. She said she couldn't sleep because she was stressed and needed comfort food and human connection. I told her that she was keeping me up and she needed to be more considerate. She shot back that I'd never understood the emotional turmoil she deals with and that I was lucky my brain wasn't wired like hers. I snapped and told her this arrangement wasn't working and she needed to make plans to leave. She burst into tears and said I was abandoning her during her darkest moment. The next morning, she called my parents, who immediately called me. They said family should support each other, and I was being cold and ungrateful. My mother said that when I bought a house with extra rooms, it implied I was prepared to help family in need. I told them that I never signed up to be my sister's long-term caretaker or emotional support system, especially when she disrespects boundaries. They insisted that she just needs time to get on her feet. I asked how much time they thought was reasonable, and my dad said, as long as it takes. The following day, I laid out a firm 2-week notice. I said she needed to find another place, whether it was a short-term rental, a roommate situation, or moving back to our parents' cramped condo. She got extremely upset, telling me I was choosing my comfort over her survival. She accused me of not caring about her mental health and said she couldn't believe her own brother was throwing her out. She stopped speaking to me except through passive-aggressive notes she stuck on the fridge, like didn't know my existence was a burden and sorry for breathing too loud. I've stayed calm, but I've held firm. She moved out yesterday, storming out with her bags, calling me a selfish robot. My parents are furious and said she's moving into their living room indefinitely. Now extended family members are messaging me, saying things like, "You have a house, she has nothing," or "You should have supported her until she was stable." A few cousins have said they get why I did it, but most people seem to think I'm the villain. I know she was going through a rough breakup, and I don't want to downplay that. But I also don't think it means I'm obligated to sacrifice my mental well-being and the peace of my home indefinitely. I feel guilty because she genuinely had nowhere else at the time, but I also feel like I was being taken advantage of. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids into my house after they destroyed something irreplaceable and then getting blamed for choosing objects over family. Last month, my older sister Melanie asked if she could stay at my place for a few days while her house was being treated for a mold issue. She has 2 kids, 9 and 11, who are energetic on a good day, feral on a realistic one. I agreed because I figured it would only be a short stay and it felt like the right thing to do. My house is not kid-proof, but I assumed that because they're older, basic rules would stick. Before they arrived, I explained 3 things. No playing upstairs without me around, no running in the living room because I have some fragile items, and no entering the small spare room because that's where I keep a collection of old music equipment inherited from our dad. Our father passed away when I was 18, and those items are the only things I still have of his. One in particular, a vintage acoustic guitar he restored by hand, has immense emotional value to me. It's not in playable condition anymore, but I keep it on a display stand in the spare room. Everything was fine for the first day. The kids were bored, but I did my best to keep them occupied. I made snacks, set up movies, even let them help me cook dinner. Melanie mostly scrolled her phone on my couch, occasionally shouting vague instructions like, "Guys, be good," without looking up. On the second morning, I was working remotely in my office when I heard a crash followed by that guilty silence kids make when they know they messed up. I rushed upstairs and found a spare room door wide open, both kids inside, and the guitar on the floor with a huge crack down the front. The display stand was knocked over. There were also scuff marks on the wall from what I later realized was them throwing a foam ball back and forth. I completely froze. Something in me just deflated. I asked what happened, and they both immediately blamed each other. Melanie finally came upstairs after I called her 3 times. When she saw the guitar, she said, "Well, that sucks," like they'd spilled juice instead of destroying the last meaningful object I had from her dad. I asked why they were in the room when I explicitly said not to go in there. The 11-year-old said they were exploring, and Melanie just shrugged and said they're curious kids and accidents happen. I told her that rules exist to prevent accidents, especially when I explain why certain things matter. Melanie got defensive and said I shouldn't keep breakable stuff lying around if I'm going to host children. I reminded her that they were my guests, not the other way around, and that my house doesn't need to be redesigned because she can't supervise her own kids. Things got heated, and she accused me of overreacting because it's just a guitar. That comment honestly felt like a slap. I told her she needed to pack up and go stay with our mom for the rest of the week. Melanie called me dramatic and said it was unfair to kick her out over an accident. I told her she wasn't being kicked out because of the accident. She was being asked to leave because she ignored my boundaries and refused to take responsibility. She left angry, dragging her kids out while they complained loudly that my house was boring anyway. Later that night, she sent a long message saying I should apologize to the kids for yelling I didn't yell, that I owed her gratitude for visiting at all, and that she wouldn't replace the guitar because it was old and not useful. She ended by saying she'd tell the family how unreasonable I'd been. Over the next few days, several relatives reached out. Some were neutral, some took her side. My aunt said I was making too big a deal out of an object and that children shouldn't be punished for accidents. My cousin, who actually knew our dad, was firmly on my side and said Melanie had always been careless. Here's where it escalated. Last weekend was our mom's birthday. I went to the dinner and Melanie and the kids were already there. When I walked in, the kids stood behind Melanie like they'd rehearsed it and loudly asked why I didn't love them anymore and why I banned them forever. The room went silent. I told them calmly that I loved them, but that people need to follow rules in someone else's home. Melanie cut in with, "See, this is what I meant. You make them feel like criminals." The kids kept insisting they should come back to my house to prove they can behave. It was painfully obvious Melanie put them up to it. I told them maybe another time when they're older, but right now things need space. Melanie accused me of being cold-hearted and said I value an antique more than family relationships. I left the party early because I didn't want to create a scene. Now half the family thinks I'm the villain. They say I'm gatekeeping my home, holding a grudge, and being unforgiving. One relative said, "Kids break things. That's life." But these kids didn't break something despite following rules. They broke something after intentionally breaking a rule and then lied about it. Since then, Melanie has doubled down. Yesterday, she texted saying the kids want to come spend a weekend at my place to rebuild trust. I told her I'm not ready for that, and that I won't feel comfortable having them over until she acknowledges the boundaries and agrees to actually enforce them. She replied with a wall of text accusing me of emotional manipulation and telling me she won't grovel to gain access to my home. I haven't responded, so here I am wondering if I should have been more forgiving. I know objects can't replace people, but this wasn't just an object. It was the last piece of my father's hands-on craftsmanship, and Melanie refusing to acknowledge the hurt makes it 10 times worse. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids back into my house until she takes responsibility? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their rustic aesthetic wedding after they insisted on making major changes to it without my permission? I'm a 34-year-old homeowner who bought an old farmhouse a few years ago and restored it room by room. It's not fancy, but it's mine, and I've put thousands of hours into fixing it up. The house has a big field, a barn, tall old trees, and a pond in the back. It's the kind of place people tell me looks like it belongs on a postcard. My younger brother, 30, recently got engaged to his fiancée, 28. I'll call her Marcy. They've been planning a wedding, and a couple months ago, they asked if they could host it on my property. I was honestly flattered. My first instinct was yes, because I love my brother and we've always been close. So I told them they could, as long as they coordinated with me on setup and didn't do anything permanent without asking. Fast forward, as planning ramped up, the requests started rolling in. First, it was simple stuff like where the ceremony could be, whether I'd mind moving my fire pit for more space, and if they could bring a tent. Totally fine. But then the tone shifted. Marcy called me one afternoon and asked if I'd be willing to cut down some of the old trees near the pond because she wanted an unobstructed sunset shot. I said no, because those trees are over a century old and part of what makes the place beautiful. She acted surprised and told me she didn't think it would be a big deal, which already rubbed me the wrong way. Then, a week later, I got text from my brother asking if I could resurface my barn floor because the photos would look weird with scratches and stains. The scratches and stains he referred to are from decades of use, kind of the whole point of a rustic barn. I asked why this was suddenly an issue when they said they liked the place as is. My brother said the photographer recommended something more uniform. I told him resurfacing a barn floor is expensive and unnecessary, and I wasn't doing it. He said he'd try to talk to Marcy. 2 days after that, I came home to find Marcy and 2 of her friends walking around my backyard with measuring tapes. They were marking random spots with little flags. I went outside and asked what they were doing. Marcy very casually said they were mapping out where the arches and pergolas would go. I asked what pergolas she meant. She told me her dad, who's handy with woodworking, was planning on building 2 permanent pergolas on my property, one near the pond and one near the barn. I told her absolutely not. If they wanted temporary arches for the wedding day, fine, but nothing permanent. She looked annoyed and said, "Well, I thought you meant we could customize the space." I told her I never agreed to permanent structures, especially ones I didn't ask for and didn't want. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being really inflexible." At this point, I told my brother we needed to talk. He said Marcy was just stressed and trying to make the day perfect. I said I understood wedding stress, but her plans were completely disregarding my property and boundaries. He promised he'd rein her in, except the opposite happened. A week later, I found a contractor's card shoved under my door with a note that said, "For the patio expansion." I called the number, and the contractor told me Marcy had contacted him asking for quotes about expanding my back patio by several feet so there'd be more mingling space. I was furious. I told him I wasn't doing any patio expansion and he should ignore whatever inquiry she made. I called my brother again and told him this was completely out of control. He apologized, but it was the kind of flat apology that didn't sound like he actually thought anything was wrong. He asked if I could meet halfway, since this was their special day. I told him that my halfway was hosting the wedding for free on my property, not remodeling my house for their photos. The final straw came 2 weekends ago. I went out of town for a work trip. When I got back on Sunday evening, I found that the barn doors had been painted white. Originally, they were a deep, weathered red. Now they were this weird, glossy white that looked completely out of place on the old barn. There was no note, no text, nothing. I called my brother immediately, furious. He hesitated, then admitted Marcy had hired one of her cousins to repaint the doors as a surprise upgrade. I told him the wedding was no longer happening at my house. He started yelling, saying I was overreacting and that I was ruining their wedding. I yelled back that they literally altered my property without permission and disrespected every boundary I set. Marcy then texted me this long paragraph about how she didn't realize I'd be so territorial and that the wedding would bring me positive attention because their photographer was kind of notable in the area. I told her that repainting my barn without asking was vandalism. She responded with, "Well, technically my cousin did the painting, not me, so that's a harsh word." My parents have since gotten involved. They're trying to be neutral, but my mom keeps saying things like, "It's just paint, honey," and my dad keeps encouraging me to let it go for family harmony. My sister, on the other hand, thinks I should have banned the wedding as soon as the tree-cutting request happened. My brother and Marcy have now moved the wedding to a local vineyard, and they're still insanely angry with me. My brother keeps saying I embarrassed him and caused unnecessary stress. I told him that if hosting their wedding meant giving them free rein to modify my property like a DIY project, then I didn't want any part of it. Here's where I'm stuck. I know weddings make people unreasonable. I wanted to be generous, but everyone keeps acting like I'm the one who escalated things by putting my foot down, even though they repeatedly cross boundaries. So, AITA for pulling the plug? Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after her wedding turned into a disaster because of something I warned her about for months. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and my younger sister, Emma, is 29. We've always been close, though not in the oversharing everything sense. She's emotional, dramatic, easily stressed, and has a long history of choosing partners who are, to put it gently, projects. Her now husband, Tyler, was no exception. He's the type who insists he's the smartest person in the room while simultaneously failing upward in every aspect of life. From the moment they got engaged, Emma warned everyone that their wedding would be the most organized wedding anyone had ever seen. She said she was planning down to the very second. But this was the same woman who once forgot her own dog at the groomer's overnight. I love her, I support her, but I'm also realistic. Months before the wedding, she asked me to be the logistics manager for the day. She wanted me to keep the timeline running, coordinate with vendors, wrangle the wedding party, and basically act as a human cattle prod. I said absolutely not. I said I'd help set up chairs or drive grandma around, but I wasn't going to be responsible for an entire wedding's coordination. I told her she needed to hire a day of planner, a real one, someone who actually knew what they were doing and wasn't part of the family. She said planners were a scam, that she could handle it herself, and that Tyler's cousin, who had once organized a high school talent show, could handle everything. For the record, this cousin was 19, chronically late, and had never planned anything bigger than an ice cream social. For the next few months, whenever Emma complained about how hard planning was, I repeated the same advice. Please hire a coordinator. A real one. Even a cheap one. Even a friend who had done it before. Anyone. Just not the teenage cousin who once forgot to plug in the popcorn machine at the talent show and caused an entire PDA meltdown. She got annoyed with me for being negative. She said I had to trust her process. She even accused me of being jealous that she was finally having her dream wedding and you're stuck being a bachelor with your cat. My cat is delightful, for the record. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. I wasn't going to fight her. It was her day, her wedding, her problem. Fast forward to the actual wedding. I knew the moment I arrived that things were going to go down like a slow-motion train crash. The venue was gorgeous, but no one seemed to know where anything was. The cousin coordinator was wandering around with a walkie-talkie she didn't seem to know how to use. The florist was looking for someone to pay the balance. The officiant had shown up at the wrong entrance and waited outside for 20 minutes because no one had told him where to go. The DJ was trying to plug his equipment into an outlet that didn't actually work. Emma ran up to me, sweating through her hair and on the verge of tears, and said, "Can you just take over? Please? Please fix this." I told her I'd help as much as I could, but I couldn't magically become a professional planner on the spot. I managed to calm the DJ down, get the officiant inside, and redirect the florist, but it was like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Then came the ceremony itself. The cousin forgot to start the music for Emma's entrance. So Emma walked down the aisle in silence, except for someone's phone alarm going off. The ring bearer tripped and dropped the rings, which rolled under a row of chairs and took 5 minutes to recover. The officiant mispronounced Tyler's last name. When the officiant said, "Do you have the vows?" both Emma and Tyler looked at each other and realized they'd left their handwritten vows in the bridal suite. People had to awkwardly wait while someone ran to find them. It was chaos. Not endearing chaos. Not rom-com chaos. Genuine, sinking, sweaty panic chaos. The reception somehow managed to be worse. The caterer was late, so everyone sat at their tables with empty plates for nearly an hour. The DJ's playlist kept skipping. The bar ran out of ice. Emma cried in the bathroom twice. Tyler snapped at 3 different people. The cake arrived damaged, with a chunk missing from the back. At one point, the cousin coordinator just sat down at a table and ate cake as if she had done a full day of hard labor and was clocking out. After the wedding, Emma called me and said everything had been ruined and that I should have just helped more. She said that because I'm so good under pressure, I could have taken control and saved everything. I said that I had warned her repeatedly for months and that she chose not to listen. I said I wasn't going to apologize for refusing to take responsibility for something she decided to gamble on. She hung up on me. Now my parents are saying I should just apologize to keep the peace. They said Emma is in post-wedding emotional shock and needs support. I don't think I should have to apologize for telling the truth ahead of time, setting boundaries, and refusing to be the scapegoat for a disaster I explicitly predicted. She planned a wedding without a professional, put everything on a teenager, ignored every warning, and now it's somehow my fault? But everyone is making me feel like the world's biggest jerk for not saying sorry, just to smooth things over. So, AITA for refusing to apologize after my sister's wedding imploded exactly the way I told her it would. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their wedding after they tried to secretly move in. So I, 33F, bought my house 3 years ago after saving for nearly a decade. It's a modest place, nothing extravagant, but it's entirely mine. My brother Luke, 30M, has always had a rocky financial situation. He works on and off, loves grand ideas, but not much follow-through, and tends to assume family will help him out no matter what. I love him, but boundaries have always been a struggle. Luke got engaged last year to Mia, 28F. She's nice, but extremely convinced she belongs in a lifestyle well above their means. They started planning their wedding and immediately overspent. Then the venue they booked went under new management and canceled on them. They lost most of their deposit and went into panic mode. One evening they came over for dinner and were very sweet and unusually helpful in the kitchen. I should have known something was up. After dessert, they sat me down and explained their idea. They wanted to have the ceremony and reception in my backyard. Not a small gathering, but 120-person wedding with a tent, catering setup, DJ booth, bar, and a dance floor. I have a decent backyard, but it's not a commercial venue. I asked where they planned to park everyone, where the bathrooms would be, and how they expected my neighbors to tolerate a huge party blasting music until midnight. Mia waved her hand and said I was overthinking it. Luke said it would be meaningful since it's family land. It is not family land. I paid for it myself, and no one else contributed a cent. I told them I needed time to consider it. They seemed annoyed but agreed. A week later, while I was at work, I got a text from my neighbor asking why there was a moving truck in my driveway. Confused, I drove home on my lunch break. I found Luke and Mia unloading furniture. Not wedding supplies. Furniture. Big pieces too. Dresser, mattress, side tables, lamps. I asked what the hell they were doing, and they said they needed a place to stay temporarily so they could save money for the wedding and be around to help set up. I asked when I agreed to this. They exchanged looks like I was being dramatic. Luke said, "You didn't say no." I absolutely hadn't said yes. I told them to put everything back. Mia started crying about stress and bad luck. Luke said I was choosing property over people. I said they were trespassing and taking advantage of me. They argued that empty rooms shouldn't go to waste and that if I loved them, I'd support them. I told them to leave immediately. They left angry and sent a flurry of texts that night saying I ruined their future. A couple days later, they asked again about the wedding. At this point, I told them absolutely not. They blew up. Mia said she already told her relatives the wedding would be at my place, and uninviting everyone would humiliate her. I told her that wasn't my problem, especially after the move-in stunt. She replied that family should forgive mistakes. The situation spread through the family like wildfire. My parents took Luke's side, saying I was being rigid and that I could have let them stay just for a few months. They argued that the house is too big for one person and that weddings are once in a lifetime. I told them I work full-time, I like my privacy, and I refuse to suddenly become the free venue, free landlord, and free event coordinator. My aunt, who is the most level-headed person in the family, asked me privately to explain what exactly happened. When I told her about the attempted sneak move-in, she was shocked and said she understood why I was upset, but she urged me to be the bigger person and let them at least have the wedding there if I wasn't comfortable with them living with me. I still said no. I'm uncomfortable even having them in my house at all right now. The trust isn't there. The entitlement was overwhelming, and I feel like agreeing to anything now would signal that these tactics work. Now most of Luke's side is saying I'm permanently damaging the sibling relationship over a yard. A few cousins have implied I'm jealous because I'm single. My coworker thinks it's hilarious and told me to install cameras and motion sensors. Luke and Mia have since found a different venue, but at a much higher cost. They're blaming me for it and say that if I had been compassionate, they wouldn't be so financially stressed. They even hinted that I should contribute to make up for the emotional trauma I caused during their planning. I haven't budged, but part of me wonders if I'm being too cold. It was a big moment for them, and I know they're struggling. But at the same time, they tried to move into my home without permission. And not a small misunderstanding. They rented a moving truck. They packed furniture. They fully intended to establish themselves there and let me discover it after the fact. Things are still tense. Family gatherings are awkward. My mom has taken to making passive-aggressive remarks about how some people value privacy over family bonds. Mia posted a vague social media rant about people who pretend to support you until you need real help. Luke hasn't spoken to me directly except to send one short text saying he hopes I learn empathy someday. Part of me feels guilty because I do want my brother to be happy. But the larger part of me is still stunned by the sheer entitlement and manipulation. I keep wondering if any reasonable person would have reacted differently. So, AITA for refusing to let them use my house for their wedding after they tried to move in behind my back. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I didn't agree to be the perfect maid of honor. This is going to be long, but I need some perspective because I'm honestly torn about whether I really messed up or if my sister was being unreasonable. I'll try to give as much context as possible. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Mia, 25F, who has always been a bit controlling. Not maliciously, at least I don't think, but she likes things her way and expects people around her to follow her lead without question. Growing up, we had a decent relationship, but there was always this underlying tension whenever she felt I wasn't supportive enough. I always thought I was a good sister, helping with homework, listening when she had problems, giving her advice, but apparently that wasn't enough. When Mia got engaged last year, she immediately assumed I would be her maid of honor. I was happy for her, but I've never really liked the idea of being a traditional maid of honor. I don't like being the center of attention. I'm not great at giving speeches, and honestly, the idea of planning showers and bachelorette parties made me want to crawl under a rock. I tried to gently suggest that maybe another close friend or relative could take the role, but Mia was insistent. She told me she wanted me there for emotional support and to make the day perfect. I reluctantly agreed, figuring I could survive it. And for the most part, I tried to be accommodating. But that's where things started to get difficult. First, there were the dress fittings. Mia had a very specific vision, down to the exact shade of pink for the bridesmaids' dresses. I'm pale, and the color washed me out completely. I politely suggested maybe a slightly different tone for my dress or a different cut, and she got very defensive. She said, "It has to be this way. You can deal with it." I agreed, even though I hated how I looked. Then came the bridal shower. Mia wanted a fancy, extravagant brunch at a high-end hotel. I don't mind a party, but I also have a tight budget. I politely told her I couldn't contribute much financially and suggested maybe scaling it down a bit or choosing a less expensive venue. She got upset, saying it was my duty as her maid of honor to help her with everything and implied that if I cared about her, I'd find a way. I ended up shelling out more than I was comfortable with because I didn't want to ruin the party. Things came to a head with the bachelorette party. Mia wanted it to be a weekend trip to Las Vegas. I couldn't swing the expense, both in terms of money and time off work. I told her honestly that I couldn't go, but offered to help plan a smaller local party for her before she left. She yelled at me, saying I was letting her down and that I didn't care about her happiness. I apologized and tried to make it up in other ways, but she was clearly upset. The final straw was the wedding day. Mia had created this extremely tight timeline. She wanted me to be in charge of coordinating the bridesmaids, making sure vendors were on schedule, keeping her calm, and also standing by her side like some perfect statue of support. I was already exhausted from weeks of planning, stress, and feeling guilty for every little thing I couldn't do perfectly. During the ceremony, one of the bridesmaids had a small meltdown over her dress, and I couldn't immediately fix it. Mia glared at me and whispered, "This is why I should have picked someone else." Later, during the reception, she got upset because I didn't cheer loudly enough during the speeches, and then she was furious when I refused to dance in every single song she requested. At that point, I snapped. I told her, loudly enough for some of the guests to hear, that I wasn't a prop and that I wasn't going to sacrifice my own comfort, happiness, or mental health to make her day perfect. I said she could have someone else next time, and that while I loved her, I refused to be treated like a doormat. Some guests looked shocked, others were trying not to laugh, and Mia just cried. After that, I stepped away for a while. I didn't help with cleanup, I didn't engage in any more maid of honor duties, and I tried to just enjoy the rest of the evening at a distance. When I got home, I sent her a long message apologizing for how I handled it in public, but also explaining why I felt pushed to that point. Mia hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. My parents are upset because they say I ruined what should have been her happiest day, but I honestly feel like she was the one who made the day miserable for herself and everyone else by expecting perfection from me. Some friends have told me I should have bitten the bullet and been more accommodating, while others say I was completely justified in standing up for myself. I love my sister, and I do regret yelling at her in front of everyone, but at the same time, I feel like I was trapped in a role I didn't want and wasn't capable of fulfilling without harming my own well-being. I'm not sure if I'm the asshole here, or if she's being unreasonable. So Reddit, AITA, for refusing to be the perfect maid of honor and letting my sister down on her wedding day. Character count, 6,347. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her new boyfriend to our family vacation after everything that happened last year. So, some context. My 32F sister, Jenna, 30F, and I have always had a pretty close relationship, but we've had some drama in the past. Last year, our extended family decided to rent a big cabin in the mountains for a week-long vacation. Everyone was super excited, including me. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, nothing fancy, just a chance to catch up and spend time together. I had even planned a few small surprises like a game night and a little hike with snacks I'd prepared in advance. I've always loved planning things for family trips. Everything was fine for the first couple of days, but on the third day, Jenna's then boyfriend, Mark, came along unexpectedly. We had never met him before, and she hadn't mentioned he'd be joining. At first, I tried to be welcoming. He seemed normal enough, I guess, but very quickly it became clear that he was problematic. He criticized the meals I had prepared, made fun of the cabin's decorations, and basically acted like he owned the place. One night, he even went into my suitcase without asking, claiming he needed something, and then blamed me for being paranoid when I confronted him. The worst part was on the last day. My cousin, who's a bit socially awkward, accidentally spilled coffee on Mark's phone. Instead of just accepting it was an accident, Mark went ballistic. He screamed at my cousin, calling him lazy and stupid, and stormed out of the cabin, leaving everyone in an awkward silence. The mood of the whole trip completely shifted after that. People were tense, some even crying quietly because they felt uncomfortable, and Jenna didn't really defend anyone. She mostly tried to calm Mark down and ignore the fact that he had ruined the trip for everyone. After that trip, I basically stopped interacting with Mark. Jenna was still in the relationship at the time, but she seemed to understand why I didn't want him around. She apologized for not telling me he was coming and promised that if he came again, she'd let me know ahead of time. Fast forward to now. Our family has planned another vacation, this time at a beach house. I was genuinely looking forward to it, and I was excited to actually relax. I mentioned to Jenna a few weeks ago that I was thrilled about everyone being together again, and that I wanted to make sure we had a calm, drama-free trip. That's when she casually mentioned that she and Mark are now officially together and that he would be joining this time. I was caught off guard. I reminded her of everything that happened last year and explained that I wasn't comfortable having him there. I tried to be polite and reasonable. I didn't say you can't come. I said I wouldn't be attending if he was there. I also offered a compromise. She could visit me at the beach separately for a day if she wanted to bring him, but I wasn't willing to spend an entire vacation with someone who had previously caused such a huge scene. Jenna's reaction was not great. She started yelling, saying that I was being controlling and that I was punishing her for her choice in a partner. She accused me of holding grudges and said I was making things uncomfortable for everyone. She said the rest of the family would just deal with it if I didn't come, which made me feel even more guilty and frustrated. I reached out to my parents to explain the situation, thinking they might help mediate, but they kind of shrugged it off. My mom said, "Well, he's your sister's boyfriend now. You should try to get along." And my dad said something similar, but more along the lines of, "It's vacation, just don't start any arguments." I don't want to start arguments. I just want to enjoy a week away without someone making everyone else miserable again. I tried to explain that this isn't personal against Mark. It's based on his previous behavior and the negative impact it had on everyone, including other family members. I even offered to go separately, so Jenna could still enjoy the vacation with him if she wanted. But Jenna refused to compromise and said I was being unreasonable. Now, a few of our extended family members are starting to take sides. Some of them agree with me and remember how tense last year got, while others think I'm overreacting and that people should be able to get along. I'm feeling torn because I don't want to ruin family plans, but I also don't want to put myself through a repeat of last year. I'm worried that if I insist on not going, Jenna and possibly others will resent me. On the other hand, I can't imagine enjoying a vacation knowing Mark is going to be there and probably causing issues again. I also feel like the family is prioritizing her relationship over everyone's comfort. So, AITA for saying I won't go if Mark is invited, even though it's a family vacation and everyone seems to think I should just deal with it. Character count, 6,463. This fits Reddit's popular AITA narrative style with family drama, relationship conflicts, and moral ambiguity. If you want, I can create 3 alternative endings with different reactions from the family to make it feel more like a thread with debates and votes, which can increase realism. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister crash at my place after she intentionally caused a huge mess in my house. I, 32F, live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I work in tech, and my schedule can be unpredictable, which means I really value my personal space and downtime. I've always been very careful about keeping my home clean and organized because it's my sanctuary. My sister, Emily, 28F, is basically the opposite. She's spontaneous, messy, and tends to treat other people's spaces as if they were hers. Last weekend, Emily called me out of the blue and said she needed a place to stay for a few days. She had gotten into a fight with her roommate and didn't have anywhere else to go. I was hesitant because I had plans to do some freelance work over the weekend and really needed a quiet environment. But I agreed to let her come over on the condition that she would help with cleaning, follow basic house rules, and stay mostly out of my way. I even cleared my schedule a little so she wouldn't feel unwelcome. When Emily arrived, things immediately started going sideways. First, she brought half a dozen friends over without telling me. I came home from running errands and found them playing video games in my living room, drinking, and eating food off my kitchen counters. I told her that this wasn't what we agreed on and asked them to leave. She said she couldn't control them and that I was overreacting. The next day, I discovered she had taken it upon herself to rearrange my living room furniture because it felt more open and somehow managed to spill an entire bottle of wine on my rug. When I confronted her, she shrugged and said it would come out in the wash. It didn't. I had to spend hours trying to salvage the rug, and part of it is now permanently stained. On top of that, she had started using my bathroom toiletries without asking, left her dirty clothes everywhere, and even borrowed my expensive camera equipment for an impromptu photo shoot in the hallway without my permission. I reminded her multiple times to respect my space and boundaries, but she acted like I was being unreasonable and said I was too uptight. I reached my breaking point the morning of the third day. I had a major deadline for a project and walked into the kitchen to find a giant mess. Empty food containers, sticky countertops, and her friends sitting around eating cereal straight from the box. I finally snapped and told her she couldn't stay anymore. I asked her to pack her things and leave immediately. She started yelling at me, saying I was kicking her out when she needed help the most, and accusing me of being selfish. Our argument escalated, and she ended up calling our parents. They sided with her initially, saying I should make room for family. I explained everything: my prior warnings, the chaos she caused, the broken rug, the constant disruptions, but they still seemed to think I was overreacting. They said I should have been more accommodating and reminded me that she's my sister and family should support each other. I understand their perspective, but I also feel like she crossed every boundary and didn't respect the space I allowed her. After she left, I spent an entire day cleaning and fixing the mess. The stress affected my work, and I'm still upset about some of the things she damaged. I've been debating whether I overreacted or if I was justified in asking her to leave. Part of me feels guilty because she genuinely needed somewhere to stay, but another part of me feels like letting her continue living in my apartment would have been a disaster. I've talked to a few friends about it, and most of them think I was completely justified, but I haven't talked to my parents again because I don't want to get into another argument. I'm also worried that this will permanently damage my relationship with Emily. I'm starting to wonder if I should have handled it differently, like setting stricter rules from the start, or if asking her to leave was the only reasonable option. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay after she created a huge mess in my apartment and disregarded all my boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother live with me after he lost his job, even though our parents think I'm overreacting. So, some background first. I, 32M, have been living in my apartment in a moderately sized city for about 5 years. I have a stable job, a solid social circle, and I've been slowly paying off my student loans and building some savings. My younger brother, Jake, 27M, has always been a bit more free-spirited than me. Not in a fun, adventurous way, more like the kind of person who avoids responsibility until it lands on his doorstep. He's bounced between jobs, moved between apartments, and generally relied on our parents to cover gaps when things went south. A few months ago, Jake was let go from his job at a small marketing firm due to downsizing. That's when the drama started. He called our parents, and naturally, they were sympathetic. Mom suggested he stay with me temporarily until he could get back on his feet. I told her I appreciated her concern, but that I wasn't comfortable with that arrangement. I wasn't just being mean. My apartment isn't very big, and I work long hours. I'm not great at sharing space, especially when I rely on routines to manage stress and my own workload. Plus, over the years, I've noticed that whenever Jake has stayed with me, it tends to last longer than he plans, and he doesn't contribute much financially or with chores. That's part of why I've tried to avoid it. I explained all this to my parents. I said, I get that Jake needs help right now, and I want to support him in other ways, but my apartment isn't suitable for him to crash here. I can help him look for other short-term housing, help with resume stuff, and even give him some financial guidance, but living here isn't possible for me. My parents were, unsurprisingly, not thrilled. Mom said I was being cold and selfish, while Dad kept hinting that family should stick together and I should make sacrifices. Things got worse when Jake himself called me. At first, it was polite, just asking if I'd reconsider. I reiterated my reasons, and that's when it escalated. He accused me of abandoning him in a time of need, and said that if I were a good brother, I would step up just this once. He also dropped a line about how I've always been the favorite because I follow the rules and have my life together while he struggles. That was hurtful, but I didn't budge. I told him I'd help in other ways, like connecting him with temp agencies, helping polish his resume, and even helping him look for short-term rentals. I made it clear that my help had limits. Here's where things really exploded. My parents decided to confront me in person. Mom came over one evening, and we had a tense conversation. She said she felt I was being too rigid and that sometimes family obligations required discomfort. She also hinted that if I didn't let him stay, it might damage my relationship with Jake permanently. Dad later called to reinforce the point, saying that family is supposed to support each other in crisis, and living together is not a huge sacrifice. I tried to explain that supporting someone doesn't have to mean sharing your living space. I suggested that maybe a short-term sublet, a room in a friend's apartment, or a small Airbnb would be a better solution, especially since Jake's unemployment might last longer than he expects. But they kept pushing the same line, that I should make room for him, even temporarily, because family comes first. I want to be clear, I'm not heartless. I've given Jake money for groceries in the past, and I've helped him with moving costs and other small expenses. I've also spent countless hours helping him strategize for jobs. But sharing my apartment is different. It's my private space, and having him stay even for a month would disrupt my work, my routines, and honestly, my mental health. It's not a question of love or loyalty. It's about practical limits and boundaries, which I feel are being ignored. I know some people might say that I should just suck it up for a little while, but my concern is that doing so could reinforce patterns that aren't healthy. Jake has a tendency to take advantage of situations, and I worry that letting him move in might enable him to avoid responsibility rather than face the reality of finding his own housing and employment. After refusing, Jake stopped speaking to me for a few days, which I expected. Our parents, however, have been noticeably cold. Family gatherings have been awkward, and they've both made comments about me being selfish or not caring about family. Mom even said, if you don't help him, don't expect him to be close to you later, which felt manipulative. I've been sticking to my stance, though, and helping Jake in ways I can without opening my apartment to him. I've helped him set up interviews, network with former colleagues, and even offered to pay for a short-term rental for a few weeks, which he hasn't taken me up on yet. Now I'm starting to question myself a little because the tension with my parents is stressful. They're implying that my refusal is some moral failing, and part of me wonders if I should reconsider, at least for a very short period. But at the same time, I feel like compromising on this would be setting a precedent that would make it harder to enforce boundaries in the future. My apartment is small, my routines are strict, and I feel like I'm not being unreasonable by saying no. I'm curious about how the Reddit community sees this. Am I really the selfish one here? Or are my parents and brother unfairly trying to guilt me into a situation that I'm uncomfortable with? I genuinely want to support Jake, but I feel like there's a limit to what that support can look like without it becoming detrimental to my own life. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me, even temporarily, while still trying to support him in other ways. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding because of her last-minute demands? So, I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F, who has always been very dramatic and a little manipulative. Growing up, I often felt like I had to take care of her or fix situations she created, but I usually did it because I love her. However, this past week has pushed me to my limit, and now my family is divided. I need an outsider's perspective because I'm second-guessing myself. Emily got engaged about 6 months ago. Her fiancé, Mark, 27M, is a sweet guy but very laid-back, almost to the point of being passive. Emily has been planning the wedding since the engagement, but she does it in bursts. She'll be obsessed for a week, then drop it completely for a month. Early on, she asked me to help with the wedding planning because she said I'm organized and good with logistics. I agreed, thinking it would be fun to help her out, and because I didn't want to disappoint her. For the first few months, I did everything I could, helping her pick the venue, recommending florists, making spreadsheets for guest lists, and helping her stick to budget. Mark helped too, but honestly, Emily would often override his input or get frustrated if he didn't understand her vision. I accepted that. It's her wedding, and I thought my role was to support her. Everything was fine until last week. Emily called me in a panic because she said she had just realized her wedding dress was completely wrong for the venue and theme. Apparently, she didn't try it on in the venue's lighting or take photos of it outside, which seems like something people usually check months in advance. She demanded that I go shopping with her immediately to find a new dress and insisted I pay for the taxi because we'll be going to multiple stores and it's expensive. I told her that I could come shopping with her for a day, but I wasn't paying for the dress or the taxi. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and not supportive of my big day. Then things escalated. Emily also decided that her bridal party's outfits were all wrong. She said that the colors she picked a year ago now clashed horribly with her new vision. She demanded that I drive around to multiple stores and convince the bridesmaids to change their dresses immediately. When I hesitated, she accused me of being lazy and inconsiderate, and said if I didn't do it, she would have to do everything herself, and it would be chaotic. At this point, I started setting boundaries. I told her that I had other responsibilities, and that a wedding is about both of the couple, not just her, and that last-minute changes were unreasonable. She got extremely angry, saying I was ruining her special day, and that she couldn't rely on me like she thought. I tried to calmly explain that I had been helping for months and that suddenly taking on all these additional tasks at the last minute and paying for some of them was too much. She then threatened to exclude me from the wedding if I didn't comply. That really hurt because I've been supportive of her for years, but I also feel like her demands were unfair and manipulative. I told her I would attend the wedding, but I wasn't going to help with any last-minute changes or expenses that she hadn't planned for herself. Our parents found out about the argument and called me, saying I should just help her and stop making a big deal. I tried to explain that I had helped extensively and that her expectations had become unreasonable, but they didn't seem to understand. They said I was being selfish and ruining the family dynamic. Mark actually sent me a text thanking me for not enabling her crazy, which made me feel a little better, but it also shows just how stressful this situation has been for everyone. Now, my sister is barely talking to me, and our parents are subtly taking her side. I feel like I've done more than enough over the past 6 months, and that her last-minute demands are not my responsibility. But I can't shake the feeling that maybe I'm being too harsh or unsupportive. I don't want to ruin her wedding or my relationship with her, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding last-minute demands, especially when she expects me to cover costs and handle tasks I've never agreed to. AITA for refusing to lie to my sister about my inheritance, even though it caused a huge family fight. I, 32F, come from a fairly close-knit family. I have one younger sister, Emily, 29F, who has always been a bit dramatic, to put it mildly. Growing up, Emily and I were very different. I was always the responsible, quiet one, and she was the social butterfly who thrived on attention. Our parents treated us equally in most ways, but there was definitely some favoritism from my mom toward Emily because she was the baby and so charming. About 6 months ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. It was devastating for all of us. My mom, Emily, and I were all struggling to cope, but I had always been the one my family leaned on to handle practical matters. So I took the lead on organizing the funeral, sorting through my dad's affairs, and eventually looking over the will. Here's where it gets complicated. My dad left a substantial inheritance, which he split into two parts. One portion went directly to my mom, and the other portion was divided between Emily and me. Emily and I each got an equal amount in cash, but there was also a family property, a lake house, that my dad specifically said in the will would go to me, because he knew I'd take care of it. Now, Emily has always been financially unstable. She has a history of bad investments and impulsive spending. She immediately assumed the inheritance would be hers, and when I told her the will left the lake house to me, she threw a fit. She begged me to just let her have it, or at least sell it, and split the proceeds evenly. I refused. I tried to explain that the house wasn't just an asset. It was sentimental for our dad and a place he had spent his whole life building memories in, and he clearly wanted me to have it. This is where things really escalated. Emily started telling extended family and friends that I had tricked our dad and manipulated the will, which is completely false. My mom got involved and it became a huge fight. She tried to mediate by suggesting I lied to Emily about the inheritance, essentially telling her that the cash portion I got was smaller and that she could keep the house, but I refused. I couldn't bring myself to lie, especially since Emily had already been spreading false information. The conflict worsened over the next few weeks. Emily began posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about siblings who only care about money, tagging family members in subtle digs at me. My mom was extremely upset and started pressuring me constantly, saying things like, "Just give her the house. It's easier than fighting the family over it." She also suggested that if I didn't, she might cut me out of her life. I finally decided to have a direct conversation with Emily. I told her that the inheritance and the house were not negotiable and that the only way our relationship would survive was if she accepted what was in the will. I explained that lying would solve nothing and would only cause resentment in the long term. Emily screamed at me for hours, saying I was being selfish, cruel, and ungrateful for everything she had done for me over the years, which I found unfair because she hadn't really done much other than expect me to handle things for her. She eventually stormed out and hasn't spoken to me since, except through occasional angry text messages. Now, the rest of the family is split. Some relatives support me and say I'm honoring my dad's wishes, while others, including my mom, think I'm being unnecessarily harsh. Emily has been rallying family friends to her side, claiming I'm greedy and manipulative. My mom has stopped talking to me as much, and it feels like every family event is going to be a battleground. I want to maintain a relationship with my sister, but I also feel that lying about the inheritance would betray my dad's memory and my own values. I've offered to help her financially in other ways, like contributing to a down payment on a new place or helping her get back on her feet, but she refuses to accept anything unless it's the lake house. I'm starting to wonder if I really am in the wrong here. Maybe I should just give in to keep the peace, but something in me feels that doing so would set a dangerous precedent and reward manipulative behavior. I've tried to stay fair and calm, but it's tearing the family apart, and I can't stop feeling guilty for causing so much stress, even though I think I'm doing the right thing. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to lie to my sister about my inheritance and sticking to what my dad wanted, even though it caused a huge family conflict. Character count, 6,383 if you want. I can also craft an even longer version hitting closer to 7,000 characters with more intricate family drama and emotional nuance. So it reads like the most popular AITA posts ever. Do you want me to do that? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.